Welcome back, everybody. We're going deep today, diving deep into these LA wildfires,
Yeah,
but focusing specifically on the human side. You know,
right.
what are the stories behind the headlines? And we've got some sources here that paint kind of a stark picture of the challenges that these evacuees are facing.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
I think it's so important to remember that, natural disasters, they don't just displace people physically,
Right.
they disrupt whole communities, and they really expose the vulnerabilities that we have in our support systems.
Yeah.
It's an impact that goes way beyond the immediate crisis.
And think about the number of evacuees. It's just staggering.
Yeah.
It's something like 92,000 people still can't go back home.
Wow.
Can you imagine? I mean, think about having your life just completely upended like that.
Right.
You know, it's not just even about losing a house. It's like the ripple effect that this has on families, jobs, just everything.
Yeah, you're right. It's total chaos. Families are scattered, jobs are put on hold, routines just vanish
Yeah.
overnight. And suddenly, their number one priority is just finding shelter. And that's a huge problem,
Right.
especially in a city like LA that's already struggling with a lack of affordable housing.
I mean, our sources are describing people sleeping in cars,
Yeah.
shelters, hotels, crashing on friends' couches,
Right.
just whatever they can do.
Anything just to have a roof over their heads.
Yeah, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
Some of these people are paying a lot of money just for temporary housing.
And it really, it throws a harsh light on the housing crisis that's already, existing in LA.
Yeah.
Um, these evacuees are now competing for an even, more limited amount of resources
Right.
in an already strained market.
And it's not just competition either. There's exploitation going on.
Absolutely.
We came across this story about a rental in Brentwood that got over 1,000 applications after the fires.
That's unbelievable.
Can you imagine?
It's hard to even fathom that.
I mean, just the level of competition that people are dealing with is incredible.
Yeah. And, another source we have talks about a family in Altadena that's facing eviction from their temporary rental because somebody offered the landlord $8,000 a month.
Oh, my gosh.
It's these situations like this that really raise those ethical questions
Yeah.
about, profiting off of other people's misfortune,
Taking advantage of people when they're
especially during a crisis.
down,
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking. And then you think about the most vulnerable people in our community.
Right.
The ones that are hit the hardest by all of this. And one story that really stuck with me was the 75-year-old woman, Leela King,
Oh, gosh.
who was forced to sleep in her truck
Oh, wow.
with her son after having surgery because they couldn't find any place that they could afford
Wow.
to stay.
Leela's story really just highlights the challenges that seniors face during these disasters. Their support systems are often disrupted, and navigating the chaos of, trying to find temporary shelter
Yeah.
can be incredibly difficult, especially if you're dealing with health issues or mobility limitations.
Absolutely.
It's heartbreaking, to
It's-
hear these stories.
It is, and we're going to talk a lot more about that, but first we have to take a quick break. It's even if you do find a place,
Right.
it's just temporary, right?
Right.
It's not a solution. And then there's this long and daunting task of dealing with insurance,
Yeah.
rebuilding your life,
Yeah.
coping with the trauma of losing everything. I can't imagine how.
It's a long road.
Yeah.
It's a long and winding road back to any semblance of normalcy. And even then,
Yeah.
for some people, that normal might never look the same.
Right.
One of our sources actually profiles this guy, Godwin Amafa, who lost his home of 25 years in the fire, and he's in a hotel right now.
Wow.
But the uncertainty of what comes next, what happens when the free hotel stays run out, or,
Right.
the insurance money doesn't come through, or whatever it might be.
Right.
He describes it as, feeling lost in a fog.
Oh, wow.
And I think that really resonates with a lot of people in this situation.
Yeah, and that sense of being lost,
Yeah.
not knowing where to turn or what to do next.
Right.
That must be amplified when entire communities are displaced.
Absolutely.
Like what happened to Altadena.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable to think that almost all 45,000 residents had to evacuate. I mean,
It's hard to even fathom that.
yeah.
An entire community.
Like, where do you even begin to
Right.
recover from something like that?
Yeah, and one resident was quoted as saying, "Everybody's scrambling for homes."
Wow.
And it just makes you realize the scale of this disaster,
Yeah,
and the impact that it's had on people's lives.
And it really underscores how these disasters don't, happen in a vacuum.
Right.
They magnify the issues that are already there.
Exactly.
And in this case,
it's the housing crisis.
it's a housing crisis.
That's front and center.
Front and center. And it's just, it's heartbreaking to see people who've already been struggling now facing even greater challenges,
Absolutely.
But in the midst of all this hardship,
it
is inspiring to see how communities are coming together, to support each other.
It's amazing.
Our sources talk about people, opening up their homes to strangers, organizing these donation drives, offering emotional support,
Right.
It shows, that resilience.
The resilience of the human spirit, even in the darkest of times. It's heartwarming to see that outpouring of compassion and support. But I think we need to remember that these initial efforts, while, incredibly crucial, they're often temporary.
Right.
And this recovery process can take months, even years.
Yeah.
And these people are going to need that sustained support through that whole journey.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
How do we make sure that the support doesn't fade away?
Right.
As the headlines move on to the next crisis.
That's the million-dollar question, and I think it requires a multifaceted approach,
Okay.
both on an individual level and a societal level.
Okay.
As individuals, I think we need to stay informed,
Yeah.
donate to reputable organizations, volunteer our time, and even just check in on people that have been affected by these fires, these acts of kindness, no matter how small, can make a huge difference.
It's about showing up for each other,
Exactly.
Not just in the immediate aftermath, but in the long run.
In the long haul.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then on that societal level, I think we need to be looking at, how do we address these systemic issues that these disasters are laying bare, investing in resilient infrastructure, expanding affordable housing options, strengthening our social safety nets.
Right.
These are all essential steps toward building a more prepared and equitable society.
So thinking bigger than just this one event.
Exactly.
And working towards solutions that will help us be more resilient in the face of, whatever challenges come next.
Precisely. We need to move beyond simply reacting to crises and shift towards a more proactive approach.
Okay, so
it's about prevention as much as it is about, reaction.
It sounds like true preparedness involves kind of a fundamental shift in how we approach these situations.
You're absolutely right. We need to stop seeing disasters as these isolated incidents and start recognizing them as opportunity, to build back better, you know? Imagine a future where our cities are not only prepared for these inevitable challenges, climate change, we know these things are going to happen, but they're also designed to support everyone, especially the most vulnerable among us,
That's a powerful vision.
Yeah.
And one I think, a lot of people would love to see become a reality. And it's a reminder that we all kind of have a role to play.
Absolutely.
In building that more resilient future.
It starts with recognizing that interconnectedness, this wildfire, it's exposed the fault lines in our housing system.
Right.
But it also highlights the incredible strength and compassion within our communities.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in the face of, such devastation, there's hope to be found.
There is.
In the way that people come together.
Yeah, it gives me optimism for the future. We have the capacity to learn from these experiences and build a world that's better prepared.
That's what we need.
For whatever comes next.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
As you go about your day, I want you to consider this.
Okay.
How can you contribute to building a more resilient community? What steps can you take, big or small, to support those affected by this disaster and work towards a future where everyone has the resources and the support that they need to thrive, even in the face of adversity?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
For us all to reflect on, and on that note, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the LA wildfires.
Yeah.
We hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of the challenges that these evacuees are facing.
Absolutely.
And maybe even inspired you to take some action.
Yeah, get involved.
Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.